Welcome to SDR IAS Academy Civil Services Coaching Program. In our Indian Polity lecture, we were going to learn about Parliament of India. So, let us start with the introduction to Parliament of India. In this video lecture, we were going to learn about what is meant by Parliament, what are the composition of Parliament, then finally we were going to deal about how the representatives of people were elected to the Parliament or the system of election of the Parliament of India. On these broad topics, we were going to get ourselves introduced to the Parliament of India. Parliament. In Part 5 of Constitution of India, with Article 79 to Article 122, we are discussing about the powers, privileges, officers, functions, and various other aspects of the Parliament of India. Parliament of India is the supreme legislative body of the country. Since India has adopted for a parliamentary form of government, this Parliament taken a central position in the Indian democratic system. The Parliament of India is the integration of the President, the Council of States, and the House of People. Or in short, we used to say the Parliament consists of President, Rajya Sabha, and Lok Sabha. The Indian government is the quasi-federal in nature. That is, the Indian government acts as a federal government in normal circumstances, but in extraordinary circumstances like external aggression or war, in the circumstances, the Indian government acts as a unitary form of government. So, the India has adopted Bicameral Legislature to give effect to the federal nature in the normal circumstances. That is, the India has two houses, that is lower house as well as upper house. First, let us know about the upper house, that is Rajya Sabha. The Rajya Sabha is also known as Council of States. The reason for stating Rajya Sabha as Council of States is it represents the states and union territory of the India. Initially, these two houses, that is Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, were known as Council of States and House of People. But in 1954, the Parliament has adopted a resolution to change the names of these two legislative bodies. Accordingly, the upper house is named as Rajya Sabha and lower house is named as Lok Sabha. We will get a complete picture of Rajya Sabha in the coming video lectures. Now let us have a little introduction to Lok Sabha. Lok Sabha is the lower house of Parliament of India. The Lok Sabha is also known as First Chamber or Popular House. We used to call Lok Sabha as the House of People. The reason for stating Lok Sabha as the House of People is it represents the people of India as a whole, whereas the Rajya Sabha represents the state and union territory. So it is the difference between the Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. The Lok Sabha enjoys or exercises more power when compared to Rajya Sabha. As of now, we are focusing on the introduction to Parliament, so it is sufficient for Lok Sabha, and we will get a complete picture regarding the Lok Sabha in the coming video lectures. We have seen that Parliament of India consists of three integral parts, that is President, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. You may have the question that both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha were legislative bodies and hence they were part of Parliament of India. But the President of India has no role to play or he doesn't present in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, then why we have to consider President as an integral part of Parliament of India? The reason is, in Indian Constitution, to enact a law or to make a constitutional amendment, the bill has to be passed by both the houses. Even the both houses has accepted or passed the bill, it has to get the assent of President. Only then the bill becomes an act or a law can be passed. So the presence of President is very important from the perspective of Indian Parliament. So he is the integral part of Parliament of India. It is one of the major reasons for having President as integral part of Parliament of India. And then the President is the important person who performs certain functions regarding the proceedings of Parliament. For example, the President is empowered to summon and prorogue the House of Parliament. Similarly, he has the power to dissolve the government also. The president has the power to issue ordinance when the both houses were not in the session. So there were lots and lots of functions were prescribed for president to perform. So as a result, the president becomes an integral part of Parliament of India. After which, India has adopted parliamentary form of government. We know that the parliamentary form of government emphasizes on the interrelationship between legislative and executive. So it is directly implied that the executive authority, that is the president, becomes part and parcel of the Parliament of India. These were all the three important reasons which make President of India as the integral part of Parliament. Composition of Parliament, that is composition of Rajya Sabha and composition of Lok Sabha. First, let us learn about composition of Rajya Sabha. The maximum strength of Rajya Sabha is fixed at 250 members. Only 250 members will be elected to the Rajya Sabha. Among 250 members, 238 of them were elected indirectly. Do note down, for Rajya Sabha, the indirect election is what preferred, whereas for Lok Sabha, the direct election is preferred. And the President of India has the power to nominate 12 members to the Rajya Sabha. The 12 members will be eminent persons in their own field. The fourth schedule of Constitution of India is discussing about the allocation of seats to states and union territories regarding Rajya Sabha. Now, let us take a closer look to learn how these seats were allocated to states and union territories. First, let us learn about how the states were giving representation in the Rajya Sabha. Actually, the representation of the states in Rajya Sabha is made by, or representative is elected by the elected members of state legislative assemblies. In common term, we call the elected members of state legislative assembly as MLAs, that is member of legislative assemblies. These MLAs participate in an election, that is they participate as a voters, thereby they select the representative of state in the Rajya Sabha. This election process is carried out in the mode of proportional representation, in the means of single transferable vote to each and every MLAs. Actually, the number of seats allotted for each and every state is depending upon the population of the state. For example, if the population of a state is high, then the Rajya Sabha seats allotted to the particular state is also high. Suppose the population is low, for example in the case of Goa, then definitely the number of seats allotted in the Rajya Sabha for such kind of state is also lower. So it has to be noted that the number of seats allotted to a state is depending upon the population of the state. But for example, consider the country USA, that is United States of America, where they follow the federal structure and they have almost around 50 states. So in the representation of states or the council of states, they have 100 members. That is 2 members from each state is selected. Thereby in the council of states they have 100 members. But in Indian scenario it is completely different. There is no equal representation of states is provided in the Indian system, whereas in the United States of America the states were given equal importance and thereby 2 members were selected from each and every states. It is one of the difference between the Indian Constitution and the American Constitution. Next we learn how the representative of Union Territory is selected. Actually, for selecting the representative of Union Territory, they formulate an electoral college. This electoral college members select the representative of Union Territory in an indirect election methodology. Here also they adopt a system of proportional representation by means of single transferable vote. We have earlier seen that for selection of representative of the state, they use MLAs as the members to vote or select the representative of the states. But in case of representation of Union Territory, they have electoral college to select the representative of Union Territories. It is a difference between the mode of selection of representative between states and a Union Territory. You also have to note down that only 2 union territories were having their member or representative in the Rajya Sabha. That is, only the Delhi and Puducherry Union Territory were having their representative in the Rajya Sabha. The other union territories like Andaman and Nicobar or Lakshadweep or Dadra Nagar Haveli or Chandigarh, and likewise the other union territories were not having their representative in the Rajya Sabha. So from the UPSC prelims perspective, you have to note down that only Delhi and Puducherry were having their representative in the Rajya Sabha. The next way by which the Rajya Sabha seats can be filled is by nomination method. That is, the Constitution of India has provided certain provisions under which the members can be nominated to Rajya Sabha. Accordingly, the President of India has the provision to nominate up to 12 members to the Rajya Sabha who were eminent person or a person with special knowledge in the fields of art, literature, science and social service. The persons who were eminent or experts in these fields were eligible to be nominated to the Rajya Sabha by President. The reason for providing a nomination is to provide these eminent persons a place in Rajya Sabha without going through the regular process of election. That is, by this way, the knowledge pool of Rajya Sabha can be enriched. That is the motto of nominating a person to the Rajya Sabha. So far we have seen the composition of Rajya Sabha. Now let us learn about composition of Lok Sabha, that is lower house. The lower house has a maximum seats of 552. It is fixed. And among the 552 seats, 530 seats were allocated for the states and 20 seats were allocated for the union territories. Finally, the remaining 2 seats were allocated for the Anglo-Indian community who can be nominated by President of India. This provision is available in the Part 5 of Constitution of India itself. The Part 5 of Constitution of India has stated that whenever the Anglo-Indian community is not properly represented in the lower house, then the President of India has the power to nominate 2 members from the Anglo-Indian community to the Lok Sabha. That is the reason for nomination of 2 members. Similar to the representation of Rajya Sabha, now let us learn how the Lok Sabha is represented. First, let us learn about how the representative of state in Lok Sabha were selected. Actually, the representative of states in the Lok Sabha were selected by the direct election methodology. In direct election methodology, the people of a particular constituency participate in the election as a voters, which is conducted by the Election Commission of India. For electing the representative of states in the Lok Sabha, they follow the universal adult franchise mechanism. That is, every adult who were belonging to that particular territorial constituency were eligible to participate in the election process. That is, every adult is eligible to participate in voting. There shouldn't be any kind of discrimination shown on the grounds only of color, caste, religion or gender. Initially, the Constitution of India has provided 21 years as the cut-off age for participating in the election. But the 61st Constitutional Amendment Act of 1988 has provided or reduced this voting age from 21 years to 18 years. Accordingly, the number of people who were participating in the election were increased to a greater extent. It is one of the electoral reform process which is carried out for better participation in the election. So far we have seen how the election process were carried out to fill the Lok Sabha seats in the states. Now we will learn how the seats were allocated to the union territories. The Lok Sabha has provided 30 seats to the union territories. The Constitution hasn't provided any direct methodology for selection of representative of union territory to the Lok Sabha. But this Constitution has empowered the Parliament to prescribe the manner in which the members to be selected from the union territory to the Lok Sabha. Accordingly, the Parliament have enacted Union Territories Direct Election to House of People Act of 1965. And now, by this act or by the procedure prescribed by this act, the members of Union Territory were selected to the Lok Sabha. This process is carried out by Election Commission of India. The third mode by which the Lok Sabha seats can be filled is by means of nomination. The Constitution of India has provided certain provisions to the President of India to nominate up to 2 members from Anglo-Indian community to the Lok Sabha. The reason is, if the members of Anglo-Indian community is not adequately represented in the Lok Sabha, then the President has the power to nominate 2 members. At the commencement of Constitution, that is in 1950, it has stated that this procedure of nominating persons to the Lok Sabha have to be stopped from 10 years of the commencement of Constitution. That is, the procedure is to be implemented only up to 1960. But this process is keep on continuing. Finally, in 95th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2009 has provided that this process of nominating 2 members of Anglo-Indian community to the Lok Sabha should be continued up to 2020. This is provided in the 95th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2009. So far we have discussed about the composition of Parliament. Now we are going to see about the system of elections to the Parliament. First, we consider certain important aspects regarding system of elections to the Lok Sabha. That is, we are going to learn about what is meant by territorial constituency. Then we are going to see about how the readjustment have been taken place after every census. Then we are going to see about how the reservation of seats were provided for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe people. Finally, we are going to see about the what is meant by system of representation for the election to the Parliament. Territorial constituencies. It is the first aspect regarding system of elections. We know that every state of Union of India is separated into different territorial constituencies for the purpose of conducting elections to the Lok Sabha. Of the total strength of Lok Sabha, that is 552, the seats were reserved for every state according to its population. The Constitution of India has made certain provisions regarding the allotment of seats to each state. There were 2 provisions, and the first provision is dealing about the number of seats allotted to the state. This provision is simple to understand if we consider an example. For example, consider there were 2 states, State A and State B. Now, this provision number 1 states that the ratio of population of State A to the number of seats allotted to the State A is always equal to the ratio of population B of State B to the number of seats allotted to State B. This ratio will be always constant for all states of Union of India. But one general exception to this rule is this provision is not applicable to state having population less than 6 million. The second provision in this regard states that the ratio between the population of each constituency to the number of seats allotted to it is same throughout the state. That is, consider for example, the population of territorial constituency T1 to the number of seats allotted to the state is equal to population of territorial constituency number 2 to the number of seats allotted to the state. It virtually means that the population of each territorial constituency is same. That is what dealt in the provision 2 regarding territorial constituency. Now, this provisions 1 and 2 ensures the uniformity of representation between different states and between different constituencies in the same state. We know that the seats were allocated in the Lok Sabha based upon the population of the states. So, whenever a new population census comes out, the population definitely changes and it will ultimately lead to changes in the number of seats allotted to each state in the Lok Sabha, and the release of new census will also lead to the new division of state into different territorial constituency. These 2 changes takes place whenever there is a release of new census. So for doing this, the Parliament is empowered to determine the authority and manner in which the changes or readjustment is to be made, for which the Parliament enacts the Delimitation Commission Act. The 84th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2001 has frozen the readjustment of Lok Sabha seats after every census till 2026. The reason for frozening the readjustment is to encourage the population limiting measures of state governments. And then the 87th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2003 has provided for the delimitation of constituency on the basis of 2001 census. Earlier, the 84th Constitutional Amendment Act has frozen the delimitation of constituency on the basis of 1991 census. But this 87th Constitutional Amendment Act has provided the delimitation on the basis of 2001 census. But this delimitation can be carried out without altering the number of seats allocated to the states. So 87th Constitutional Amendment Act is in accordance with the 84th Constitutional Amendment Act. These two factual data were important from the perspective of preliminary examinations. Do note it down. The second important provision regarding system of elections to the Lok Sabha is about reservation of seats to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe people. The seats were reserved in the Lok Sabha for the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe people on the basis of their population ratio in the nation. Even though the reservation is provided for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe people, there is no separate electorate is provided for them. That is, these scheduled caste and scheduled tribe people were elected to the Lok Sabha by all the eligible voters in the constituency, not just the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe voters. Apart from contesting from the reserved seats of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, these people can also contest from any other general constituency to the election of Lok Sabha. There is no barring for them to participate in such general seat. The 87th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2003 has fixed the number of seats reserved for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe people to the Lok Sabha on the basis of 2001 census of population. And then the 95th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2009 has provided that this reservation of seats for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe people have to be continued until 2020. These were two important amendments regarding the reservation of seats to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe people for the election of Lok Sabha. In general, the elections can be carried out in two modes of representation. That is, number 1, proportional representation, and then number 2, territorial representation. In India, the proportional representation methodology is adopted for the elections to Rajya Sabha, whereas the territorial mode of representation is adopted for elections to Lok Sabha. Now, in coming sections, we will learn about what is meant by territorial representation and what is meant by proportional representation. First, let us learn about territorial representation. Every member of a legislature represents a geographical area which is known as constituency. Usually, only one member or one representative is selected from each constituency. So, it is known as single member constituency. In the election, the candidate who secures the majority of votes in the election is declared as a person elected to the Lok Sabha or legislature. This mode of simple majority for electing to the Lok Sabha in the territorial representation does not represent the whole electorate because it doesn't give due representation to the minorities in the constituency. It is one of the disadvantages of territorial representation. But in contrast to territorial representation, in proportional representation, all sections of people get their due representation in the legislature. This representation is provided in accordance with their population ratio in nation. In this proportional representation, even the minority of population get their representation in the legislature. It is not possible in the case of territorial representation. So it is one of the advantageous provisions of proportional representation. There were two varieties of proportional representation is available. They were number 1, single transferable vote system, and then list system. These two systems were discussed in our another video lecture. and at present we are focusing only on introducing the basic concepts regarding Parliament. Here, the first kind, that is the single transferable vote system, is employed for elections to Rajya Sabha, State Legislative Council, that is for electing the Member of Legislative Council or MLC, then for elections of President and Vice President. On these cases, the proportional representation of single transferable vote system is employed. The mode of proportional representation is not adopted for the elections to Lok Sabha. The reason is, at the time of independence and at the time of the constitutional enactment, the literacy rate of India is at its very ebb. So, due to the low literacy rate, it is not possible to make the people to understand the criticality of proportional representation system. So, the constitutional makers has decided not to adopt proportional representation mechanism for elections to the Lok Sabha. And then the second important reason is, India is ethnically diverse nation. That is, there are lots and lots of linguistic minorities were present in our country, and there were lot of religious minorities were present in our country. As a result, having proportional representation will lead to increase in the number of parties who were present in the Parliament or Lok Sabha. It is not suitable for the parliamentary form of government which India has adopted. So, to address these issues, the constitutional makers has decided not to adopt the proportional representation for elections to the Lok Sabha. Instead, they adopted territorial representation mechanism for election to Lok Sabha. And that is what all about a little introduction to Parliament. And now let us take a quick review on what we have learned so far. Initially, we have learned about what is meant by Parliament. Actually, Parliament is a supreme legislative body. It consists of President, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Parliament is mentioned in the Constitution of India in Part 5 from Article 79 to Article 122. Then we have seen that why the President is placed as an integral part of Parliament. These were all the important topics which we have discussed regarding Parliament. Then we have seen what is meant by Lok Sabha, that is the representative of people. And then we have seen what is meant by Rajya Sabha, that is the representation of states and union territories. And that is what all about what is Parliament. Then we have seen about what is the composition of Parliament. We have seen the composition of Rajya Sabha and then composition of Lok Sabha. The composition of Rajya Sabha is 250 members, among which 12 of them will be nominated by President of India. Then we have seen the composition of Lok Sabha, that is 552 members where maximum strength fixed. 2 members from Anglo-Indian community will be nominated by President of India. Then we have seen different modes of representation from states and union territories and nominations to these Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha. Then we have seen the system of elections to the Parliament. In system of elections to the Parliament, we have seen what is meant by territorial constituency. Then we have seen the readjustment mechanism which is carried out after every census. Then we have seen the reservation for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe peoples. Finally, we have seen the system of representation, in which we have seen the 2 modes of representation, that is proportional representation and territorial representation. These were all the important topics which we have discussed in our video lecture on Introduction to Parliament, and that is what all about the introductions. All the best for your examinations. Keep visiting www.comeonindia.com. Thank you.